It's fantasy playoff time. I really think we should be focusing on helping people win their championships. Don't you think we should give some comfort to all the people, like the majority of folks who didn't make the fantasy playoffs? What about them? We'll care about all the people out there. God, I hate this guy. Bring it in. Get on in here. I mean, come on, seriously. It's week 15. This is a serious time in the fantasy football survival kit. Fantasy playoffs are here. They have started. You're already stressing about them, but the reality is, like, only, 20% of you really made the fantasy playoffs? There's a lot of folks out there who are just ready to kind of disengage with this whole thing because you blew it this year. You screwed up. And on that note, if you had a chance to get a do-over, what would you do with that do-over? That's what we asked you people, my people this week. If we could go back and redraft the first round this offseason, who are some of the picks that you would make that you did not make back then, or maybe some picks that you did make? Either way, let's get right into it. We could start nowhere else than Cooper Kupp. I mean, the guy has been literally a fantasy savior. If he's not the most valuable player in fantasy football this year, I don't know who is. I mean, look at where he was drafted. I mean, for God's sakes, most of the fantasy consensus out there, not me, shout out to me on that one, ranked Cooper Kupp behind Robert Woods. He wasn't even the top-ranked wide receiver on his team coming into this year, but he has been a total stone cold baller. I mean, the guy is gonna break records this year. Him and Matthew Stafford have been in sync all season long. He's been a complete difference maker. It's been a stressful season in fantasy football this year. The entire NFL has been so weird and unpredictable, but the folks who drafted Cooper Kupp, they're just riding in on easy street. Shout out to Matthew Stafford, shout out to Cooper Kupp, and shout out to the Breakfast Club, most of all. If you know, you know. Now, a guy who did go in the first round this year, and this is an interesting one, Ric Flair drip, Derrick Henry, right? Like, he went in the first round, you took him, but you don't regret it. And you know what? I kind of understand why. Obviously, Derrick Henry is hurt, has been on IR for weeks, for months. It's been a long time since Derrick Henry has played. But then again, this guy was so good, he basically carried you before he went on IR. It was like, listen, he put you on his back. He put your fantasy team, your little fake team, on his back, and he carried you to the point that once he was ready to let go, once he was ready to leave this season behind, you should have been fine. He should have given you enough of a lead at that point that you could figure the rest out. Obviously, it hurts to lose your first round pick. You'd prefer some guy that was going to be a baller all year long, but I kind of understand this sentiment. Speaking of a guy who's been a baller all year long, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he was the right answer in the early rounds of fantasy this year. Like, if you took this guy, imagine if you took him and Cooper Kupp together. I know this because I've got the numbers to prove it. They're the only two players who were 80% of the teams that drafted them in August clinched a playoff spot. I mean, it's just been a cheat code so far this year. People thought they were all set with their top 5 picks. Like, hey, look at me, I'm gonna get me some shares of Christian McCaffrey. Well, didn't work out so well. The actual right answer was get a late first round pick or even an early second round pick and take Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris. Those guys have been incredible, but Taylor stands ahead of them all. This guy has just been so good. I can't wait to see what he does next year. Deebo Samuel. I mean, yeah, I would love to have Deebo Samuel, even if I had to spend a first round pick. Why not? The 49ers offense, and I feel like we talk about the damn 49ers every single week on this show. They've been tough, right? They've been tough to predict all year long. We don't quite know what's going on. Guys have not been available or in the lineup for the entire course of the season. The one guy, though, who's been consistent, the one guy who's been a factor from the beginning all the way here to the end, it's been Deebo Samuel. And he's doing it every which way. Even though his receiving workload has basically evaporated at this point because George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk are absolutely balling out right now, Deebo Samuel's getting carries out of the backfield like he's a legitimate running back. I mean, nobody is better in the open field than Deebo Samuel. This guy is just a complete star. He's a joy to watch. He literally gives you good feelings inside when you see him out there. Now it's time to say some bad things, though. It's time to get to the worst tweet of the week. And unfortunately, it's this one here. Tom Brady, I mean, number one, also get these rags off of him there. He's no longer associated with this particular franchise. Tampa Bay Buccaneers Tom Brady is awesome, but awesome enough to draft in the first round of fantasy? I hate to say it, but no. And I'm not a Brady hater, okay? I'm not one of these people out there that's just like, Tom Brady wins another Super Bowl, it's just gonna ruin the whole season for me. I mean, give me a break. Submit to the greatness that is Tom Brady, okay? You're never gonna see anything like this ever again in the history of the sport. Appreciate it while you've got it. But still, again, nevertheless, Tom Brady elevating guys like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Gronk is still doing his thing. Leonard Fournette, literally a league winner at his ADP, all thanks to the Tom Brady offense down there in Tampa Bay. But you can't take Tom Brady in the first round. He's not even the top scoring quarterback this year. That honor belongs to Josh Allen, who might do it 2 years in a row. That is awesome to see. Brady's great. We love it. We're thankful for him in fantasy, but no, you can't draft him in the first round. It just doesn't work like that. Imagine being someone that drafted Patrick Mahomes like in the late first round. You hate your life right now. You're definitely not going to the fantasy playoffs in that situation. This has been nice to revisit this, but moving forward, I mean, the reality is first round picks miss, okay? Next year, you can sit here and say like, I'm gonna take Cooper Kupp or Deebo Samuel or Jonathan Taylor, all these guys next year in the first round. But the reality is some of those guys are gonna miss time. Some of those guys aren't gonna have the role that we imagine. I mean, especially running backs, like these guys just get injured left and right. It's been a weird season, and if I can leave you with anything, it's just to remember that, yeah, it's fun to talk about the first round next year, but even if you think you're gonna get a do-over and you're gonna get it right next year, like probably 70% of you will probably screw it up. I hope that helps.